Hello and welcome to Memories of Normandie Lodge. I was employed by Norm and Gladys Halden as a waitress in the dining room of the Normandie Lodge during the summer seasons of 1951 and 52. Or maybe it was 1952 and 53. It's hard to remember the exact dates way back then. What I do remember is that the Haldens lived on the lodge property in a house that was built near the street on the laneway into the lodge. Gladys's mother, Mrs. Fess, lived in the home with them. There was a large porch on the side of the house with a number of lawn chairs. Mrs. Fess spent many hours on that porch enjoying the sunshine and scenery around her. All of the staff and guests were familiar with her happy smile and her big wave. On the main floor of the lodge was the office, kitchen and dining room, a sitting room for guests, as well as a TV and reading room. Above the office were a number of rental rooms for guests. The dining room was the full depth of the building, and a full wall of windows provided sunlight at each end of the room. The set of windows at the back of the building overlooked the river, which ran behind the lodge, and the front set overlooked the entrance to the Normandie Lodge and the street. One of my fonder memories involves a handheld bell. It was my job to ring the bell loudly, walking down the boardwalk between the lodge and the cottages. The cottages were usually allotted to families with small children. I would ring the bell and call out, "Breakfast!" Windows and doors would open, and slippers, shoes, and toys would be thrown at me in protest for waking the guests up. It was a happy start to the day, as the guests would arrive at the dining room with a smile after having retrieved the items they had tossed at me. The tables in the dining room were covered in white linen cloths, and each was set up for 4 to 6 guests. The dining room waitresses were assigned a certain section of tables for the summer months, June to September. Meals in the dining room were served at the same time every day, and guests would arrive to their allotted tables. Guests were assigned to their dining table for the length of their stay, so they had the same waitress serving them throughout their vacation. All of the waitresses wore white uniforms and aprons in the dining room. Each waitress was responsible for making sure their uniforms were washed and ironed, as at that time there was no such thing as permanent press. For the dining room linens and the bedrooms, a laundry truck would arrive on a regular basis to pick up the used linens and provide clean and pressed fresh ones. I was chosen to be head waitress in the dining room. There were 8 to 10 waitresses working together, and we had a fantastic team. I remember that one of the waitresses came from Wasaga Beach, and another one was from Renfrew. There was also a young man named Eddie, who was the chef's assistant, who helped out in the dining room when needed, and you can be sure we kept him busy. We were allowed to come and go from the lodge, so long as we checked in and out with Norm, so he knew where we were. We also usually went out as a group. Norm looked after all of his staff, making sure we traveled in groups and checked in and out with him on a regular basis. He would ask Eddie to accompany the girls if we were heading out of the lodge. My father was very impressed of the care Norm took for his staff. I was the eldest of a family of 5 and the first to venture out on my own to work. The chef for the lodge was a gentleman named Hugh, who must have been well over 6 feet tall. He was a wonderful person to work with in the kitchen. He always tried to look after any special requests that a guest might have or that a staff might request. On occasion, his wife Florence would pitch in to help in the kitchen. Unlike most of the staff, he did not stay at the lodge, but would travel back and forth daily to his home in Collingwood. That year, a family gathering for my mother's birthday on July 19th was planned. Norm gave me permission to go home to Collingwood for a few hours to attend the gathering. Norm arranged to have my tables for lunch hour in the dining room covered by another waitress, and he also donned an apron to help out. Heading back to the Normandie Lodge after attending the gathering, we got stuck in traffic near the old Mayfair restaurant on the corner of Joan Avenue, which is now 18th Street. Traffic was bumper to bumper and moving at a snail's pace. I remember that at the time there was only one road in and out of Wasaga Beach. It became obvious that I was not going to get back to work on time for my next shift, and being stuck in traffic, so my dad said I should walk the rest of the way. I left my belongings in the car, including my uniform, and started to walk. Traffic was starting to move, and I was offered a ride by a family arriving at the lodge just in time for my dinner shift. I did not have my uniform for the evening, just the shorts and t-shirt I was wearing, but all went well. As I was setting up my tables the next morning in the dining room, my family arrived with my belongings. Norm invited them to join us and the staff in kitchen area where all the guests had been served. Norm provided a cake and ice cream for all the staff and my family. It was a happy ending to a great day. On another occasion, I remember my aunt, uncle, and cousins visiting from Brantford, Ontario, and Norm insisting that they join us at the lodge for beverages and goodies. In the evenings, on more than one occasion, a bonfire would be built on the banks of the river. Guests and staff would get together for a weenie roast, toast marshmallows, and have an impromptu sing-song. Musical instruments would appear as if by magic, and employees from the Diaconia Hotel, which was next door, would join in the festivities. We would also sometimes walk down to the beachfront to have a gathering. Someone would bring a guitar and a mouth organ, and a sing-song would begin. I remember one time a carload of young people stopped and asked if they could join in with our group. It was obvious that they had some musical instruments in their vehicle, and they began to play a medley of songs to which we sang along. Soon guests from the cottages in the area joined our group, sometimes bringing snacks to contribute to the fun. I remember a truck making deliveries in the area gave us a case of ginger ale, no charge. At the time, the beach was wide enough for 6 or 5, maybe even 5 or 6 cars to drive along the beachfront and still give people enough room to gather in groups. I remember these gatherings fondly. Sometimes the staff would get together, and as a group we would walk down to the main street to see the Midway, singing as we went. We would watch the rides, and every seat would be full. As we walked the main drag, checking out the tourists, people would be walking shoulder to shoulder on the sidewalks with arms full of parcels. The storefronts were full of people, and everyone appeared to be enjoying themselves. Cotton candy seemed to be a favorite treat. As we walked back to the lodge, we would again sing songs, talk, and laugh about another memorable day. Several special guests returned to the lodge year after year. I remember one group of ladies who would come to the lodge twice a season, at the opening in June and returning at the end of the season in September. These 4 ladies had been friends since early childhood. They were always placed at one of my tables in the dining room, and they were lovely ladies. At the end of each stay, they would leave me a $100 tip, and we were allowed to keep 100% of our tips. Another special couple were Russ and Dot Fuller and their teenage son. They came to the lodge yearly from their home in Rochester, New York. They invited me, with my parents' permission, to come and visit their home in Rochester. At the end of the season, I traveled by bus to Rochester and spent a wonderful week with the Fullers, all at their expense. They were very kind and generous people, giving me a great memory. When I returned home, I started work as a cashier in a local grocery store, and from there I went to work in the office of the National Grocery, which was a wholesaler distributor to the small grocery stores. Although I was no longer able to work at the Normandie Lodge due to my full-time employment, I eventually learned that Gladys and Norm owned a rental unit on Pine Street in Collingwood, which happened to be a block away from my job. I happily made contact again with Norm and Gladys, and it was always a pleasant time when they were in town. Often, Norm would appear at the office, announce that he and Gladys were in town, and stated that he was there for me to join them for lunch. My boss, Eleanor, was very understanding, telling me to take my time, enjoy my lunch, and all the memories of my happy times at the Normandie Lodge. What you have just heard is an oral history of June Thompson Andrews and the summer seasons she was employed as a waitress at the Normandie Lodge. A written copy of her musings has also been recently donated to the town archives and is available for viewing. The Wasaga Beach Historical Advisory Committee wishes to thank Mrs. Andrews for the opportunity to share in her wonderful memories and relive those special moments she spent in the beach all those years ago. Please join us again for more interesting historical stories about our great town. You can find more information about the history of Wasaga Beach by contacting the Historical Advisory Committee at wbhac2020@gmail.com.